Brighton just turned 2 years old, and one of the reasons we picked her name Brighton is because when we initially saw it, it said one who is loved, and it just captured us. We found out later that's actually not true. It means like bright town, or another one is London by the sea. And since we live by the sea, I thought that was also fitting. So we went ahead and stuck with Brighton.
Yeah.
It just really, I thought, captured her name. And then her middle name is Rebecca, after Josh's mother, who had passed from colon cancer. So we were looking to honor her. And I really do think her name is quite fitting for her personality.
Her name is quite fitting indeed. Hi everyone, my name is Seth Carnell and welcome back to the Go Shout Love podcast. As we do every month, we are here to talk about our featured kiddo and their family. For February of 2024, we are talking about Brighton from Pass Christian, Mississippi. Brighton is a happy 2-year-old, and you can tell that because she's always smiling. Her family describes her as bubbly and joyful, especially when her big brother Sully comes around. Those two share an undeniably heartwarming bond. Today we are talking with Josh and Kelly, Brighton's parents, who will paint a picture for you on what life is like with their kids, as well as take you on their journey through Brighton's diagnosis of Leigh's Syndrome. If you have been listening to our podcast, you will have heard of Leigh Syndrome before and know a little bit about its uncertainty and what it means for young Brighton's life. If you haven't, Josh and Kelly do a great job of describing what it means and how that has influenced their lives. Leading this conversation is Josh Veach, our executive director of Go Shout Love. If you have a second, please rate and review this podcast and share it with a friend. Shouting love means sharing these stories that matter.
I love that you put so much thought into the name. There's an old guy that I knew that he always said, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So even if it doesn't mean what you originally thought it meant, like, you still have a reason behind it. So that's really cool.
Absolutely.
So what you mentioned, how it's fitting to her personality. Josh, how would you describe Brighton's personality?
Oh yeah, she's just a super happy, smiley girl, especially when she's feeling, good. Not having, dysautonomia, outbreaks or whatever you want to call it. She's just normally just smiling, laughing, cooing. It's a lot of fun. You walk into the room and she just lights up. This morning, I was sitting there playing with her and everything, and then Passion, one of our nurses, walked in, and Brighton just starts laughing and smiling at her like, "You're here for me," and I think that's a lot of fun too, is like, she loves a crowd.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves a crowd. And, if a bunch of people are over here, she's just like, yelling and talking like, everybody, get over here, see me. So
She's a host.
yes,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Has the gift of hospitality.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's just an absolute blast.
That's awesome. Kelly, what would you add to her personality?
Oh, yeah. She's bubbly. We always say bright for Brighton. And, it's funny because when we had her name, my parents were like, well, what's her nickname going to be? What's her nickname? And I thought, oh, no, she's going to be Brighton, full name. We end up calling her Bright half the time. She's just so bubbly, and she is very social. Definitely a social butterfly. She loves to smile and, oh, man, be the center of attention. Absolutely.
That's awesome. When I first got here and was talking to Sully, older brother, he was telling he's almost going to be 10.
That's
so
right.
He's coming up on 10, which is a big deal. And then he was quick to pivot right to Brighton and celebrate how she had just turned 2 and all the new things that are coming with being 2. And so it was very evident very quickly that there's a bond between the two of them. And so, Josh, how would you describe that brother-sister relationship with the two of them?
I think Brighton's favorite person in the entire world is Sully. There's just unmatched joy, and happiness and glee when Sully comes downstairs in the morning and, she sees him. It's just like the biggest, shriek, shrill, like, there he is, he's coming to see me. And she just lights up like no other than for him. And, hitting him and kicking. And, she's not a super active baby, but for him, she is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Special bond.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Kelly, what about you? How do you see that relationship?
Oh yeah, we just learned recently that she can yell. We had no idea, and that's because Sully, when he comes down in the morning, he says good morning to her. They have a moment, and then he usually goes and gets on his computer. And but she wasn't done hanging out with him, and she was like yelling for him.
Come back. Yeah.
And then also he's amazing. He's incredibly helpful. He's very observant. He knows how to work the feeding machine. He actually knows how to suction her. If we ever get in a bind, we don't want to put that responsibility on him, but he's so smart and so attuned and in tune with her, and he just can make her smile and light up like nobody else can. Yeah.
We're going to get into Brighton's diagnosis and some of those things here in just a second. But while we're on the topic of sibling, that relationship, one of the things that I've been talking with previous families, that going through, especially earlier in a diagnosis and adjusting to all the things that can come with that, it can be tough on parents on how do you maintain as much of a sense of normalcy and connection and all those things that go into having more than one child, when there's so much, especially short term, like in the adjustment phases, of energy and focus that has to go into caring for your child that's now on a rare medical journey. And I'm curious how you guys have navigated and are navigating that kind of element of parenting another child and investing in that relationship as well as possible.
Yeah, it is tough. One thing that I see is like just, being intentional, paying attention. Sully is extremely smart. I'm sure he's going to come on a little bit later and tell you all about it. But I think with that smartness and everything, he actually, or that intelligence, he actually kind of makes it easy on us. Because he helps out, because he does all of those things. And I actually think he's pretty good at letting us know to, like, hey, I need some attention now, where another kid, may or may not be able to kind of do that.
Yeah.
And he'll come over and sit with you and, like just straight up tell you like, hey, let's play a game together. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Like he needs me now. He's a good communicator for his age. Like, let's go to the store together. Let's do this together. Hey, let's get, candy for movie night, and that's one thing we established is we do a movie night, either Friday or Saturday night, usually Saturday night, all together so that, we can have that, and there's just paying attention. And one thing that I've noticed is things he can do himself, all of a sudden he's asking you to help him with. So it's just paying attention to those cues, and everything to say, oh, okay, yeah, that's something he can totally do himself, but he's asking me, so there must be, a bigger reason, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really great point. That's a great piece of advice, I think, for every parent. I mean, I find myself in that situation, get asked to do this or that, and it's not actually on the top of the list of things you actually want to do in that moment. You actually have other things that need to get done or you want to do, but like reframing it and what they're really asking, like you were saying, is I want time with you, is like, oof, okay. You hear it different when you're recognizing that the underlying thing there isn't really the thing, it's the relationship. Kelly, what about you as a mom?
Yeah, I would say that Josh mentioned the movie nights. That's something that we started when we were trying to find things that we could all do together, and kind of find a time to connect. And also, just, given her situation, being out in public spaces can be difficult,
Sure.
just trying to keep everybody healthy. So movie night was something that we could do all together. And then usually we'll take Sully to Dollar General and be like, all right, pick out a candy or
Yeah,
two and
yeah.
make it a little bit special.
Yeah. Fun traditions.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Things like that. He's an excellent reader, so he will read to her. Yep. She loves that. He also, can be so silly and playful, and we need that. So It's amazing. And then to touch on what Josh was saying, I would also say that behavior is communication. Mm-hmm. So if I notice that things are a little bit off, first I'm like, did you sleep enough? Did you eat enough? Yeah. Okay, those have been taken care of. Something's going on. So let's slow down, calm down, and let's figure out how we can reconnect and do that. And he's also so smart. He's excellent at coding and computers. And so he will create games and that sort of thing, and he'll show us the games, or we'll try to have Brighton play those games as well, which I think is just incredible.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Are there any favorites for movie night in terms of snacks or drinks? What are the go-tos?
Pizza for sure.
Okay.
And cheese pizza for these guys. And then I like to get a spinach tomato chicken pizza.
Okay.
And then Twix. That seems to be a family
popcorn. You gotta have popcorn.
Favorite. And then popcorn.
Sprite for Sully.
And
usually Skittles. Yeah. So a lot of junk food.
Yeah.
It's nice. Exactly.
That's
nice.
What movie night's for.
Yep, exactly.
So, veggies don't really go with movies.
No, except for the spinach and
tomato.
Yeah.
And even some might question you on that. I would not, but some might question that. That's really cool. I think it's, I'm assuming you guys have gone through seasons of where the chaos level is higher and lower.
Yeah.
And it seems whenever you have built-in kind of checkpoints or rhythms like movie nights, seem to be kind of a nice opportunity to recenter and kind of maybe mellow out, or what am I trying to say? Maybe the bell curve of the chaos, maybe kind of
decompress.
There you go. Like try to find a middle space there. And I think that's helpful, like I said, for I think any parent to be thinking in those regards. So that was really good insight. I'd like to get into a little bit of just Brighton's story, and so tell us about when she was born and kind of what that was like. Like, was there any indications, things like that?
Sure. No, absolutely not. Everything was typically developing, normal, pregnancy. I was highly monitored because I was a geriatric pregnancy. So I was getting scans and doctor appointments more often than a typical pregnancy, just based off of my age. Mm-hmm. But nothing was indicating that there was any questions or issues at all. I went in to be induced, and oh man, I was in labor with Sullivan for 20 hours. So I was kind of mentally preparing for that. I think I was in labor for 2 hours with Brighton. She just came roaring into the world. Yeah. She was like, I'm here, I'm ready, let's go. And in fact,
let's start this party.
I delivered her myself. They were still trying to get the doctor down the hall into our other room.
Oh my word. So she was ready.
She was ready. Now, because she came out so quickly, she didn't have enough contractions on her to help her with breathing. So she did spend a week in the PICU, or NICU, and she progressed very quickly. They didn't think any issues were from labor and delivery, that was just kind of a shock into the world, and that she just didn't get enough time to get her lungs pumping. She quickly progressed on to the CPAP and then to the nose cannula, and then right off, and a day of observation and then home. Yeah. So we didn't think twice about that. So because of that, she kind of had issues with the suck, swallow, breathe rhythm or pattern. So nursing was kind of difficult. So we mostly bottle fed her, and I was an experienced mom for breastfeeding. I breastfed Sullivan for 15 months, or pumped when I went back to work. So breastfeeding to me was not something new. So I knew that she kind of struggled with that. I just assumed it was from that abrupt
Yeah.
jolt into the world. But again, didn't think too much about it. So that's kind of like something that was in the background. Around 4 months, I started to suspect something was up. She just seemed really floppy. Every time I tried to pick her up, it was almost like she'd slip through my hands. And I was like, okay, this is a little odd. And then at 6 months, she was not reaching the milestone of sitting up. She wasn't tripoding. She wasn't even attempting to try to sit up. Now she could roll over. She had head and neck control, but she just wasn't seemed to be interested in sitting up. And in fact, when we went to her pediatrician, they were like, oh, well, maybe she's just on the back end of that milestone. And I really pushed and I said, no, absolutely not. I want to get her in physical therapy. I want early intervention. I want to know what's going on. I want to help her, like we could wait, but I really don't want to. So I pushed for physical therapy, and I almost had to like argue with her for
Yeah.
it. And so,
Can I pause you real quick and
go for
ask
it.
you, what was that drive at the moment of saying I'm going to push versus, maybe it does, maybe just give it a couple more months?
Great question. I don't know if it's because I had Sullivan and she was my second child, and Sully was sitting up in like shopping carts at 4 months. So I don't know if it's because I had that experience and I was like, okay, or just my mom was a special ed teacher. I have friends who have other, friends who have differences in their children, and it's always like early intervention. And I just was like, if we could get ahead of this, then it'll just make it easier in the long run.
Yeah. So just
right?
an intuition that says,
Yeah,
I'm not going
something's
to
not
let this slide by.
right.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. And so we were doing physical therapy, and she actually was improving. She was doing great, and we thought she was doing quite well. So that was like at the 6 month mark. At that point, we got on a wait list for a neurologist because good luck.
Right.
Good luck trying to find what the underlying cause was. We were on a wait list to get in, and we had an appointment scheduled for her 9 months, like the day that she turned 9 months old. And now she was 6 months at the time, right? So that's how long we had to wait. We had to wait till September. And during that period is kind of when things started to unravel. She started to have what we thought was acid reflux. It ended up being she was vomiting a bottle here and there. And so then we had different rules about feeding. We didn't really think of it as different rules. It was just like, well, she needs to be sat up, and we need to make sure we really support her and take your time and make sure you burp her really well. And we thought we were dealing with acid reflux, and because she was progressing well in physical therapy. And then she started having these episodes. We thought they were seizures. We were told that they were not. Perhaps they were neurostorming, but they were terrifying. It looked like she went offline. That's the only way I can describe it, where she looked very confused. Her eyes were not connecting. They were kind of searching all over the room like she was lost and she didn't know where she was. And then she would shake, like trembling, like she was cold. And she had this terrible scream, and it was horrifying. And so that's when we messaged the neurologist, and they got us in early. They got us in at 8 months. They went in there, they looked her over, they're like, oh, I don't know, probably not a seizure because she's screaming, she's making noise. So, maybe it's just gas, or maybe it's just this. And we were going to have a EEG, but the person who did those was out that day. And so just come back at the regularly scheduled appointment, 9 months. So, I'm sorry, that was like when she was about 7 months old. So that month, during that 8 month, she started vomiting almost every single bottle, every single feed she was vomiting up. And we, again, really didn't realize it. We were trying to, stay on top of it. And so when we went back at 9 months, Josh actually was at the airport.
Yeah.
He had a business trip to go
Orleans, yeah.
to. I went to the appointment and she was having a really bad day. And honestly, I think it was a godsend because when the neurologist came into the room, she had vomited all over me. And then when he picked her up and held her, she had an episode in his hands. So he got to see it firsthand.
This is not gas. This is what
No.
he's able to see in that moment. Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so it was also a blessing that we had gotten in just a month prior because she was in the 10th percentile weight. She was always on the low end of weight, and she had dropped to the 7th percentile. So she had dropped weight in that month.
Not gaining like she should.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. And, we saw it every day, so really I just thought she was a tiny baby. He was very calm, and he said, I'm going to try to get you in at Ochsner in New Orleans. I'm trying to get you in so you can get that MRI that you need and an EEG and maybe even an EKG. Or maybe we can do some genetic testing and find out what's going on here. Very calm. And I said, oh, okay. And in fact, I drove to Target. I remember I drove to Target and I called a couple of friends. I called Josh and said, they think they're going to put us in the hospital, I guess. I don't know. And the doctor called me back and said, yep, they're waiting for you. You can go. I said, oh, awesome. Okay. And I said, oh, well, do I need to pack a bag? How long do you think? Oh, yeah, you should definitely pack a bag. Okay, well, how long do you think you're going to be there? Oh, 3 days. 3 days.
Huh.
And in fact, I was telling Josh, like, oh, don't worry, I'll go. It's okay. And he's like, should I cancel my trip? I was like, I don't know. I got it. No problem. Thankfully, he canceled his trip and he came with me. But those 3 days ended up being 20 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so were they, in that period of time, did that give them, and the test that they needed to run,
Yes.
was that enough to get to a diagnosis?
So during that 20 days, she had everything under the sun that you could probably think of. Scans, swallow studies, which she passed, brain MRI, blood test, genetic. Both of us gave blood, and I gave blood and urine. She gave blood and urine, EEGs, EKGs, you name it, she probably had it done.
Yeah.
And in fact, she still continued to vomit. So she had the tube that goes down your nose into your stomach, and she still was vomiting. So then they were recommending a G tube, which I wish they had kind of explained better. But we went ahead and opted for the G tube, and that was nerve-wracking because that was her first surgery, and she was only 9 months old.
Yep.
And so we left the hospital with new formula, a feeding machine, and no diagnosis. And we were scared and we didn't know what was going to happen. And then when she turned 10 months old, we went back to the geneticist at an outpatient appointment. And she sat us down and she told us what the diagnosis was, which was Leigh Syndrome. It's Leigh, Leigh Syndrome. And I'm one of those people who will Google stuff.
Right.
So
even when you're told not to?
yeah, I definitely did. And
Yeah.
I had thought that it might be that. So as soon as she said that, I just burst into tears because I knew what it
Yep.
meant. And Josh didn't know because he was like, they told me not to Google. I'm not going to Google.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us, for someone listening, and just briefly summarize in layman's terms what Leigh syndrome is.
Sure.
And how that impacts the body.
Okay. So Leigh syndrome is a rare genetic mitochondrial disorder. It is life-limiting and there is no cure. She does not create ATP. And what that means is when you eat food, your body creates ATP or energy from the food. Her body does not do that well. And she's a complex level 1, which means it's early in the chain of events, which is not good, which is why she had so many issues so early on in her life. There are different levels of Leigh's or different complexes of Leigh's where you could be older, 16 or 20 or even an adult, where it might show up. And that usually means you're further down in the chain. But yeah, her body doesn't create ATP. So and that affects everything. So her mitochondrial, which is the powerhouse of the cell, every cell, so about 20% of her cells are healthy. and the other are not because of this syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh, I want to go to the range of feelings that may have been present during those leading up to those 10 months, even before a diagnosis as dad. How did that feel?
Yeah, it was very confusing. So Kelly had gone back to work, and I stayed home with Brighton because I work from home. So it was, me working in between, her naps and all of that, and I guess just being with her day in and day out. She would vomit. The one thing is that Sully did too.
Yeah.
So to me, it wasn't massively out of the ordinary to have your kid throwing up, and it wasn't every time. And I may have convinced myself and everything that I had learned the secret, because I got her to stop throwing up as much as well, just going really slow with her, holding her, kind of in a certain way, and all of that. But when the episode started and the screaming and all of that, I mean, I was, just confused and angry and sad, and didn't know what to do for my little girl. I'd hold her in my arms and until she would stop, and didn't want to let her go. And when we got to the hospital and everything, and came in from my trip, thankfully I hadn't flown out yet. I wouldn't leave her. I stayed every single minute in the hospital, right by her bed. And I think it was just a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration as I was, just talking to the doctors, taking them at their word, as they were trying to figure out what was going on and everything. And, trying to do, the best for her, and ultimately, getting her G-tube and all of that. But it was just a lot of, fear, confusion, and at the same time, trying to stay optimistic,
Sure,
she's gonna grow out of this, and everything's gonna be fine, not knowing any better through that stay. And then when they told us what it was, and not knowing, I think that the hardest thing looking back is that word progressive, because I don't think I really understood what that meant. And as I've seen Brighton just, unravel and disintegrate in front of our eyes, in a lot of ways, it's just been, just even more, painful and breaking. And I don't know, I think there's just still a lot of just sorrow and anger over that situation, or the not that situation, the situation. But yeah, looking back to that time, just so much confusion.
Yeah.
What about for you, Kelly?
Yeah, same. Because I felt like I had done everything right.
Yeah.
Right. I was healthy and ate well, and I wasn't as active was when I was with Sully's pregnancy, but I should also say that with Brighton, hers is considered a spontaneous mutation. So I'm not a carrier, and Josh is not a carrier, and my parents aren't carriers, and his parents aren't. This is the first time we've ever even heard of this.
Right.
We had no clue what this was. So it's just a shock to the system. I mean, I have been seeing a counselor just to deal with the guilt I think that you just carry as a mom. Like, what could I have done to change this? And there's nothing. It's also ultimately changed me because I used to believe that everything happens for a reason, and I don't believe that anymore. Which is also a little bit freeing. I think it was hard initially, but honestly, I think it's been a little bit freeing to not hold on to that belief anymore. Because there's just nothing in my life or Josh's life or anybody's life that Brighton did to deserve this.
Right.
And I think that letting that go has really helped. Anyway.
Yeah.
But it definitely has changed me, who I am as a person.
Yeah. Well, and it's to point out to anyone listening that guilt that you talked about carrying is obviously undue guilt.
Right.
It's guilt that put on yourself as that mom. And Josh, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if I'm in your shoes, I'm probably having some of that as well, of just wanting to be able to fix things and having absolutely no control on the ability to change a situation.
Yeah, I think for me, it's not guilt; it's anger.
Yeah.
And that, it's the anger and not being able to, to do anything, especially early on. Like a lot better now. Like I talk to somebody as well, and have somebody that helps me express all of this and work through it and everything. But yeah, early on, it was just like, and I will say, like, it's changed me as a person too. Like, I think I have a lot more empathy now for others and their situation and what they're going through, and trying to find out, what's going on in their lives as I talk to them because of this. Like, everybody is wounded and everybody is hurt, and things have happened in their lives. So just to slow down and, ask a very important question, which is, what don't I know? What don't I know about, your situation, my situation, any situation, just helps, so much. And, another thing that I often, tell people, my dad actually asked me this. He asked me, I write about it almost every single day, or write on, something, and I just posted on Facebook, and he asked me why I do that. And I don't think he meant this, but basically he said, like, in my generation, nobody cares what you think or what you feel. And I was like, well, I write it because people do care. And, and again, I know my dad, he didn't really mean anything by it. He just said it, it was what he was thinking. And I told him, I was like, man, when I don't write, people message me and ask me what's going on. When I do write, they comment and they share, and they want to know about it. And I was like, what it's done for me is it has shown me that this world is still a caring, empathetic, kind place. And people are absolutely remarkable, because if you just pay attention to, the news and everything else, all you hear is hate and vitriol. And I'm like, my experience tells me that is not the actual case, because I see, my friends who wouldn't agree, politically on anything, rally around us and, send love and support and everything. And it has just shown me that, with just some kindness and some decency, people are absolutely just amazing.
I found that social media is the best and worst of humanity,
Yeah,
and you will find what you're looking for
that's
and
right.
what you choose to participate in. And it's so cool that you have chosen that as an opportunity to write and engage people in a way that's positive and encouraging, and especially in the midst of a situation where it's probably extra difficult to be vulnerable enough to do that on a regular basis, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard, but it is therapeutic. I
Yeah.
found, for myself, too. I think before this, I wasn't very vulnerable. I think before this, I didn't show a lot of emotion. I don't know if I do now, show a lot of emotion and everything, but I find that if I just sit down to journal and at least try, like, it helps. And then somehow, or it's obvious to me that others find it to be helpful as well, both in just understanding what we're going through, but also, in some of our friends that have children that are, disabled or whatever we call it nowadays, that they're like, wow, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed the emotion that I'm going through or went through,
Yeah.
or, and that's been amazing, because some of the people that have already gone through this, tell me like all you remember later is the joy. And like that really helps. That helps a lot to, like, not sit in your pain, but process your emotions, work through the emotions, knowing that, that joy is on the other side, and I think that's the other thing that I've really learned in all of this is, like, you choose what you want out of this life, and you choose your reality. Like, you choose how you see this world. The events that are happening and everything, you don't remember them perfectly. You generalize, you distort, you do so many things. So if I'm going to generalize and distort and process information in all these different ways, and I'm just going to choose, to make it, positive, and to see the joy, and to let, somebody sent a poem the other day that was talking about how, the furrows of sorrow, dig deep, but then those become the well of joy. And I just think that's just powerful, to just choose, like, okay, I'm going to let that fill with joy. I'm not
Yeah.
going to let that fill with hate. I'm not going to let it fill with anger. So even though I feel the anger, and I feel the sorrow, and I feel everything else that's going on, I think I'm going to process it. I'm going to move through it. I am going to feel it, and, like, deeply. And I want everybody to know that, like, feel it deeply. Like, I think it's there for you. Like, somebody actually asked me there, like, what do you think emotion is going through all of this? And I was like, the only thing that I think of now is like more and more and more is, I think it's God trying to communicate with you. And that's, what that emotion is. So if you're feeling angry, he's feeling angry about the situation. If you're feeling sad, then he's feeling sad. And you're there just together, and he's there to help you through it. yeah, so now I'm just like, I may not be able to choose the positive in the moment. I may not be able to choose the joy in the moment, but I know it's coming.
Kelly, you mentioned earlier the phrase that everything happens for a reason and how that's shifted for you.
Yeah.
And I know that faith is a personal thing for, everybody has their own beliefs, and that has been a painful word for me that I don't like when people use that phrase,
Same.
because I have always wondered that, like, it feels like a great saying in a Sunday school classroom. But when real life happens,
Oh, yeah.
when the diagnosis comes, how do you hold up that phrase? And to know that, to pair that statement with, Josh, what you just said about God reflecting, like, when I'm angry, when I feel it, when I see the injustice, it's a reflection of his feeling of the injustice. Like, that's, like, for me personally, that's a reassuring moment of that I'm not, as much as it may feel it, I'm not alone fully. And so to hear you say that is profound for me, because I don't think I've really made that connection of those two things.
Sure.
That phrase being such a stickler to me. Like, I don't normally push back or make a thing of it when somebody says it.
No.
But I've felt that, and I don't think I've really made the connection as to why until you just said that. So thank you for that. And thanks for sharing that. That's, that the idea of watering the joy, even when it's being planted among sorrow, is kind of a beautiful picture. And I think one of the most profound things that I've heard a parent say in my experience with families on this through Go Shout Love is the idea of joy and grief coexisting.
Yeah.
And again, that's one of those things that I hadn't really thought about or processed, but that it can, and that it does. And there's times where it can be, maybe the balance doesn't feel like you'd want it to be, but the idea that you can grieve loss in whatever level, but also still embrace the joy, is probably an intentional act, and obviously not an easy one. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys sharing this conversation. And I know, especially in such a sensitive, it's just real and raw. And we've had 2 Leigh families in the past, and they're dear families for us. Their stories have made a big impact on me personally. And I know that they're unique. Every story is unique, but I understand the weight that you guys or the weight of vulnerability to have this conversation, and I appreciate it, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to our community being able to shout love for Brighton in February, and I'm excited that we'll get to introduce her to some new friends, and also that hopefully it'll be an opportunity for you guys to connect at a deeper level with those that you're already connected to, those people that show up and support you in your writing, and there's just the people that are part of your everyday lives. Gives a new connecting point that maybe at a deeper level that wasn't there before, just an opportunity for more conversation.
I also want to say how proud I am of us. Because after that diagnosis, it wasn't soon after that she was hospitalized again, and then ended up with her trach. And neither one of us is from a medical background, and we have learned so much, and even have trained some of our nurses that we have. And I'm just really proud of all of us, and the strength and the fortitude and just hard work.
Yeah. We ended up spending, what was it, another
70 days.
70 days in the hospital
with
On
with
the
top
trach.
of the original 30.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, when she got her trach. Yeah, that's actually the pretty powerful story too, because and I'll let Kelly tell it.
Sure.
Yeah, because it was you who went through it. Yeah.
So, we came home with the diagnosis. Well, after that appointment. And then over Christmas, she ended up having seizures and was not returning to baseline. And we ended up going in and over Christmas and spending Christmas there. And her sodium levels had completely tanked out. And that has to do with her Leigh Syndrome. She's on different, a mitochondrial cocktail, different supplements and vitamins. So they had to increase that for her. And then they sent us home. And then she got the flu. And then she got over it. And then she was starting to vomit food again. And we were like, we had the G-tube. We felt like we were under control, all that good stuff. And we put her down for a nap. And she ended up, and I'm laying down next to her. And she was in her bed and I was in mine. And she ended up vomiting and aspirating on her vomit. And I performed CPR on her.
Oh my gosh.
I got her breathing again, and ambulance came, and we went to the local hospital that was just not equipped for pediatric, and they did a chest x-ray and said, she's great, and sent us home. And the next day we woke up and her color was just not right. And so I said, we got to go back in. So we went back in thinking it went all the way to New Orleans, thinking that it was just going to be a GI issue because of the vomiting, and maybe we have to change her formula, maybe it's another supplement thing. And we got there and her oxygen was 55.
Oh my gosh.
And then the emergency room doctor was like, well, I don't know, given her prognosis, she needs to be intubated. Do you guys really want to do that? And we had not even thought about that, wasn't even what does that mean?
Right.
And thankfully,
We were both in tears.
Tears.
We were beside ourselves.
We didn't know what to
thought our
do.
little girl was about to die
Yeah.
in front of us. The doctor's basically asking us, do we want her to live or not? We're not fully comprehending. And
Oh my.
right at that time, the PICU, the head of PICU, walked into the ER,
Just
to the
to say hi to
pediatric ER.
another doctor.
Yep, just to say hi. She was our same doctor from
Christmas.
and she looked at Brighton, looked at us. She was like, "I know you. What's going on?" And she was like, "That baby's dying. Get her upstairs right now."
Yeah, she said, what are you doing? Intubate her, get her upstairs. And I said,
Yeah.
okay.
And she took charge. Dr. Ludi, she took
She's
charge,
amazing.
and she saved Brighton's life. And because of that, we got the tracheotomy done. I still don't know which one it is. And like Kelly said, we learned how to change trachs, and we learned how to take care of her more, and we've trained her, and we helped in the hospital, trained new respiratory techs, and probably one of the coolest things is Brighton got to go to Disney because of all of this. Kelly was like making sure that Brighton got to go to Disney after all this, but it was a wonderful trip. And I think, that's one thing to talk about real quick, because, we had said things that Brighton likes. And
Oh, yeah. She loves Snow White. She loves Pluto and Donald Duck and Bluey. And, we watch Disney movies all the time. And she loves to visit with the princesses and, just coo at them. And,
Yeah.
But like all of that, because, Dr. Ludi walked in right then and was just like,
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Get upstairs.
yeah, took charge
Yes,
of
ma'am.
the situation.
What
So it was
a
awesome.
what a blessing and timing. Goodness.
At Go Shout Love, we do amazing things for amazing families with kids on rare medical journeys. Each month, we shout love for families through the sale of creative apparel inspired by the kids. This month's beautifully bright design is inspired by Brighton, a bubbly and sweet 2-year-old from Mississippi whose smile brightens up every room. Every purchase in February will go to help with outstanding medical bills and equipment for Brighton not covered by insurance. Visit our website at goshout.love to support Brighton through the purchase of a t-shirt, hat, hoodie, or other items.